Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're joining us from. So thanks very much for joining today's live webinar brought to you by Ecosystem. My name's Chris White. I'm the Director of Tech Communities here at Ecosystem, and I'll be hosting today's webinar on Pivot for the Truly Digital Era, CX Trends in the Coronavirus Era. So before we start, I'd like to give you a very quick introduction on Ecosystem and also give you an overview as to where we have got our data from. So for those of you who don't know, Ecosystem is a real-time technology research platform, and we allow you to get an immediate view and benchmark of how you compare to your peer group. And our research covers a variety of areas, obviously including customer experience, but also other areas such as AI or cloud computing. For anyone who wants to go into further details on some of our ongoing studies into CX or contact centers, I would encourage you to create your free account at ecosystem360.com, and all the data that Tim and Audrey will be presenting today can be found on the Ecosystem platform, and it's customizable for you to view. The other thing is that all of our content right now is currently free for you to consume, so all you have to do is create your account. And that includes all of our blogs, Ecosystem TV, all of our reports. Obviously, Ecosystem TV is our TV channel, our video channel, which contains presentations such as today's session, interviews with experts, and also thought leaders from the world of technology. Now, at the end of today's session, there will be a Q&A. So I encourage you to either input your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom, or you can send a private message to me and I'll ask it on your behalf. So I'd like to now hand over to Tim and Audrey to do their presentation. So just a quick introduction for them first. So starting with Audrey. Audrey is one of the foremost multidisciplinary analysts in the APAC region and boasts an eclectic set of expertise in segments as diverse as enterprise collaboration, unified communications as a service, video contact centers, CX, outsourcing, AI, mobility, and digital transformation. So a whole wide area of areas of expertise that Audrey is involved in. Moving on to Tim. Tim has more than 20 years of experience as an analyst in designing, implementing cloud AI and automation strategies into the Ecosystem network to support businesses in their IT decision-making. So it's a very quick overview. I'm going to turn off my video and I'll hand over to Tim and Audrey as they will do a joint presentation for today's session. So Tim and Audrey, over to you.
Cool, thanks Chris. Hi everyone, and thanks for attending the session either this morning or this afternoon, depending on your time. My name's Tim Sheedy. I just got the introduction from Chris. I didn't realize he was going to be doing that, so I won't talk about myself and what I've been doing, but look, the theme of the presentation today is really around the CX initiatives that we're seeing businesses take and what's changing at the moment and what organizations need to do to excel, at the moment and coming out of the back of the pandemic, which we hope happens sooner rather than later. Audrey, did you want to just say a quick hello?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Chris, for that great introduction. And yeah, I'm looking forward to presenting alongside Tim today. We will be presenting a lot of data from Ecosystems research, and you'll hear from us about what brands are doing during this time in the industry. So over to you, Tim.
Cool, thank you. So kicking off quickly with a definition of what a digital business is. I know the term digital has been thrown around a lot for the last 4 or 5 years now, right? I guess it's good to understand what we're talking about when we say a digital business, because some people have sort of sharper or looser definitions, and we actually have quite a broad one. I actually define a digital business as any organization who's obsessed with delighting their customers, right? Like a digital business is just a business that wants to be able to serve their customers effectively, and provide that great experience for them, with an understanding that, over the last few years, a growing proportion of our customer interactions have been digital, and obviously that's sort of spiked up a lot recently. Now, to be a digital business, right, to delight your customers, you need to offer great things to them. So you need to be innovative, and you need to offer them at the speed the customer wants, or even ahead of what the customer actually wants, right? So you need to be agile. So this is sort of the very loose definition of what we're describing when we talk about a digital business. It's often as much about the organization, the culture, the metrics, as it is about the traditional areas digital, which is often focused just on the technology. Now, but I guess what's happening now, and this is the reality of where many of us are today, right? A lot of us, I'm guessing maybe all of us, are taking this call from a home office, from a lounge, from the end of a dining table, right at the beginning of the pandemic, when we Ecosystem all sent their employees, all our employees were sent home to work from home. One of the first things we did was to share a bit of what's going on in your life, a bit of empathy, is we got everyone actually to share a photo of their home working setup. And we had everything from my setup, which you can't see it here, but I've actually got quite a good home office setup, having worked at home for most of the last 15 years or so. Dual monitors, webcam, great computer, standing desk, etc., in a nice, good, quiet environment. But we had people send photos of the end of dining tables, kitchen tables, tables on a balcony, one that looked like a makeup table, actually, strangely. So you realize that there's a real mix of sort of working environments at the moment, but a lot of them look something like this. Now, one of the important things that I think we're all starting to realize is this isn't just us, right? This is also our customers. We're customers of other businesses, right? And this is what our customer life looks like today. And this is also our business partners, sitting at home doing their work. This is our contact center sitting at home, right? Many contact centers across Australia and across the world have now moved to actually work at home environments. So this is this new world we work in, and we've been thrown into this 100% digital world where anything outside of the contact center is now a digital interaction with our customers, right? And I'd even argue that our contact center interactions are getting much more digital than they ever have been, because people are coming in as verified customers. We're tracking them. We might be doing sentiment analysis on the call as it happens, right? There's a lot of digital tools and analytics, and maybe even AI and machine learning happening in the background during what is a sort of a human interaction. So we've been thrown into this digital world with this pandemic, as suddenly every single one of our customer interactions are digital. And this is the same for the smallest restaurant, up to the largest business in Australia. Every supermarket, the largest businesses across the globe, right? And across Asia, right? That we're all now 100% digital businesses. And what we used to do in the customer experience era of the past is that we'd go through our customer journeys, right? We'd design these customer journey maps. We'd identify pain points, and we'd have projects of maybe a week or a month or a year, right? To start to fix some of those pain points to make that customer journey smoother. However, I argue that we don't need these customer journey maps anymore, right? I think it's all changed, and this is interesting. It goes, it's different to what some current CX research is saying or advice is saying. Some are saying, well, focus on your customer journey map. And I'm going, I don't think you need to focus on customer journey maps to understand the pain points anymore, because the pain points are bleedingly obvious, right? It's the fact that, for the first week, sometimes month, people couldn't get to through to our contact center, right? Our customers couldn't call us because, the contact centers in other countries, had effectively shut down. We didn't have contact centers anymore. The postal service was really struggling to deliver any product that was purchased. We're having all these cybersecurity issues and hacks that are happening at home. Our supply chain has been affected. Organizations like Adidas and Puma, I think Adidas has taken, I was reading they're expecting a 75% hit to their numbers in China because they quite simply couldn't release their new season's products. They couldn't start to design their next season's products because of this, right? Obviously, the retail stores have closed. Points of presence have closed. And the other thing we're finding is that our digital processes that were set up aren't as digital as we thought they were, right? That, you know, our digital processes assumed that there were humans in the office. Our digital processes assumed that there were people in the warehouse, right? And now there's nearly no one in the office, and the warehouse is operating on a skeleton staff. And all these little human steps in the process, the sign-off points, the handover points, the approval points, etc., within our processes have just stopped working, right? And customers just can't get access to our products, our services, right? So this is my point. We don't need a customer journey map to identify the pain. We're hearing from it. You know, in North America, you know, tens of millions of customers are trying to contact of mobile phone customers are trying to contact their cellular carrier to reduce their plan, right? And, you know, in the old world, we didn't set that up to be a digital process because we didn't want people to be able to automatically, you know, reduce their mobile plan. But now people aren't using the mobile networks as much. They're not using any mobile roaming, right? So we all want to switch those features off or reduce our plan. And so suddenly these contact centers, which have already shut down, you know, can't take the capacity of the tens of millions of calls or across Asia, the millions of calls that they're trying to get, right? So we're having a lot of pain in our customer journeys and our customer experience at the moment. And a lot of the effort today and the focus is on organizations trying to solve some of those pain points. So I'm going to hand it over to Audrey now to talk a little bit more about what she's seeing in the current state of customer experience.
Cool. Thanks, Tim. You know, Tim talked about the pain points that a lot of brands are going through right now, the challenges in the industry. And this is the current state of customer experience. You know, it's very common now if you're calling an airline, you're calling a healthcare authority, if you just want to speak to someone, it's highly likely that they'll tell you that you probably have to wait for 5 hours before your call is answered. There are emails today being sent to brands because customers are inquiring about a problem, a refund. They're not sure about the next steps with regards to something they've just applied for. And emails today are being answered within 42 or 72 hours, 48 or 72 hours. And that's common today. So there's a lot happening in the industry today. Contact centers are inundated with calls in every country across the globe. But listening to your customer is really important right now because this is a very good time to be there for them. A lot of them are probably going through a lot of financial hardship now. Some of them have lost their jobs. Some are just struggling to you know, support their families. So when they call you or when they send feedback through the app or when they you know, try and reach you through any other digital channel, this is the right time to really listen to them because you can start tailoring the right products for them. But if you listen to them right now and show them that empathy, it will go a long way. They will trust your brand and they will come back to you when things get better. You've got to make that experience delightful. Tim spoke about, you know, all the digital channels that are becoming important. It is important to make that experience delightful and not painful, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's through the mobile app, whether it's through email. It doesn't matter which channel your customer prefers to use. You've got to make that experience delightful. And managing customers' expectations is really difficult now for a lot of brands. But you have to understand that this is the best time to use technology to help you overcome some of these problems. And, you know, it's very common now that if you can't get through to a call center, the app will tell you to go to the website, to go to the FAQ, because that's where a lot of good information is. For example, if you want to apply for something like a job, like a subsidy that's been released by the government. So contact centers are becoming very innovative with all their channels. They're saying, don't call us, but look at all the other options. I think this is, you know, really important because we're now living in this era. Social distancing is going to be very common for all of us. And it just means that we're not going to walk into a retail shop because we if we're going to look for something now, we probably want to avoid crowded places. We want to avoid crowds. We may not want to go into a shopping center. So all this means is your customers are going to engage even more so than ever on digital channels, whether it's just browsing the website, which is why it's important to have a really good website, an updated website, and a detailed website with an FAQ. They're going to inquire about a product or service they need from friends through word of mouth, through the community. When customers are happy about something today, they'll go onto Twitter and talk about it. If they're upset, they'll tweet about it. They will use the app to get information, and they'll navigate through that mobile app. So now is the opportunity to really understand that the situation has changed in terms of how you delight your customers, but digital channels will become very important, and paying attention to every single channel that you offer, or you might not even offer them right now, but you might want to now look at how you bring all these channels together. So I think engaging with customers through multiple channels, but also making sure that your customers are heard and you respond in time is really critical. And I'd like to talk about KLM. I think one of the things that I'm starting to observe in my research and discussion with clients is that a lot of brands now are really looking to personalize that CX experience on apps and social messaging channels. And KLM did something brilliant in 2017. They thought that if they're going to get closer to their customers and their customers can reach them on all channels, they thought, if people are using WhatsApp, let's use WhatsApp as a channel to personalize that experience. If there's a flight delay, if they want to make a booking, if there's something they're not happy about, and they saw very good ratings on their CSAT. Another thing that they did, which I thought was quite brilliant, was they started losing a lot of customers in the China market. And they realized that in China, a lot of people today, they interact using Alipay, WeChat, and all the other platforms that are very common in China. And KLM said, if we're going to win back customers from the China market, we really have to address what's unique to them, what they prefer, what their requirements are. And so they started engaging with customers on WeChat, and they saw a surge in their business. So it's simple things like this that you can start doing with that brand, but also open up channels that are popular now. I think not enough brands are doing that today. They're not opening up a lot of the channels where we are on every day, like WhatsApp, like WeChat.
So we've, as mentioned at the beginning, one of Ecosystem's big differentiators is our data. We do a couple of studies around CX, one with more of a sort of knowledge focus and one with more of a contact center focus. What we're looking at here is some of our latest data around how organizations are making that transition to become an omni-channel business, right? Because ultimately that's what we're all trying to be. We're trying to get all of our touch points integrated, and that slide, which I'll just quickly flick back, it's a great example, right? Where there are so many different touch points that we use interacting with an organization. And we've all often had this experience, right? Where we get certain information from the forum, certain information from the website, different information from store, different information from the contact center. And, we're getting all this different information from every other, every person that we speak to. I had that experience recently with my telco where I got 4 different stories about what was and wasn't included in their international roaming. This is back in the days when there was international travel. There are these challenges that organizations have when trying to drive those silos together to become that omni-channel business. And you can see that, less than 20% of organizations across the globe are calling themselves a complete omni-channel organization today. About 50% are partially integrated, and a quarter, really haven't gone much more than just starting on that journey. So, we have a fair way to go. And as mentioned at the moment, a lot of organizations, and I even argue that probably some of the ones that call themselves omnichannel are finding out how important humans actually were in that digital channel, and realizing that there actually is a lot more pain than they realize, across many of these different, touch points across the different digital and human services.
And I think one of the biggest challenges when driving consistent CX, as you can see from this chart, is the integration issues. A lot of companies have invested in platforms from different vendors, and it's very common today. For example, if you speak to the bank, they've got CRM systems from different vendors. They've got loyalty programs that they're running using different brands. And then they want to integrate all of that into a common repository and ultimately integrate that into customer experience. But it's this integration issues. It's common that channels are not integrated smoothly. And as you can see from this chart, based on Ecosystem's research, it's the two biggest challenges. One is the different channels using different platforms, and different channels are managed by different teams. And I think this is another area which is a big challenge in driving consistent CX, because the sales teams would have very unique KPIs, the marketing teams would have unique KPIs, the contact center team will have unique KPIs, and it's integrating these different silos together when you're talking about that one customer to have that single view that is really important. So I think there's a lot of work that a lot of brands have to do to streamline this. And definitely one of the things that's coming out a lot more in my discussions is that you have to have a common KPI, a KPI that the whole organization looks to align themselves to.
Cool. So what are we doing to try to solve these problems? Well, we're no big surprise, and this is one that's really jumping up at the moment in this sort of 100% digital era, is we're doing a lot to improve our customer self-service. We're still working on that staff training, and again, going back to that journey that Audrey was referring to, which was that traditional one. It had a bit of in-store, had a bit of human in it, right? And many organizations have often thought of their contact center as a bit of a secondary, human contact point, right? That, you get your deep information from maybe your subject matter experts or in-store, or the face-to-face salespeople, et cetera. And the contact center is someone who can back up that process. Now that this contact center is your number one human interaction with your customers, well, suddenly we're realizing that, just being able to answer questions at a very top level isn't enough. So we are seeing a lot of change in how they're improving that staff training, as I said, particularly in the contact center space. The technology spend continues as we particularly try to overcome those integration issues. And the good news is that we are focusing on employee experience. It's the old mantra that behind every happy customer is a happy employee, rings true as much today as it ever has. And so organizations continue to, I guess I'd argue the leading organizations, the ones that really started to focus on CX early, are the ones that are focusing on employee experience today. Trying to make sure that their employees are productive and happy, and in a great position to offer the excellent customer experience, or to support that customer experience wherever they are in that journey, whether you're in an HR team, a sales team, an IT team, etc. So these are the sorts of initiatives that are taking place. One of the ones I recommend, that an easy one to get some runs on the board, particularly in your contact center, as I referred to it earlier, around this, the different knowledge that we're getting across the different silos. And that's where I'm actually making recommendations to a few clients at the moment that there are some really easy wins you can get. Okay, for example, your calls in the contact center, maybe 10 minutes at the moment, and you want to get them down to 5 minutes just so you can take more calls. Well, if you have a better knowledge system, right? If you have a knowledge system that can actually just answer questions, if you have a knowledge system that is consistent across every touch point, So people are getting the same message on the website, in the app, from the contact center, etc. There are some really easy things that, even if you've already got a knowledge system and currently agents are going to those documents, reading those documents to answer questions, even if you put the answers to the most common questions at the top of those documents, right? Or before people even get to those documents. This old fashioned, I guess, way of, using documents as a way of knowledge management is it's not a great way to do it. Customers just want answers to questions. So, it's some easy runs to get in terms of, reducing that call handling time and making customers happy, because customers don't actually want to sit on a call for a long time, right? There's always been this pressure, and I think Audrey's going to talk about it, around this, average handling time metric, about trying to make it as quick as possible. When the reality is that often doesn't help the customer experience, it actually makes it worse. But there are things we can do to reduce that call time to actually improve that customer experience. And one of those is having a better knowledge management system that's actually focused on the customers and getting those answers that the customers need. Audrey, back to you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Tim. And yeah, Tim's absolutely right. He talked about average handle time, and we all know what it's like. When you look at agents when they're on the phone, sometimes you can tell they're trying to get off the call really quickly. That's because they're pressured to take the next call. They have to meet these KPIs, and average handle time is a big KPI that contact centers live and breathe by. But there are a lot of flaws in some of these metrics in today's world, in today's digital world, and that's why in a lot of my discussions with clients, I'm starting to hear that they're not looking to apply these KPIs, but they're looking to find new innovative ways of looking at these KPIs. So, if an agent, for example, is taking 50 minutes or an hour on the call, they shouldn't be penalized if that customer is actually going to buy their home loan from you. If they're going to spend $500,000 with you. The call took 45 minutes or maybe an hour, but through sentiment analysis, through the application of AI and machine learning, when you can listen to the tone of the customer, when you can detect the happiness in their voice, that's really what agents should be judged on. So, KPIs like average handle time should be augmented with machine learning and AI capabilities. Another good one to talk about is definitely the Net Promoter Score, and I'm sure many of us have been asked to, give feedback about the call, or we'll be asked whether we want to recommend the product or service to family and friends. And I think that the industry needs to relook at this in a very big way, because you can have a really bad experience with the brand. You could be really frustrated, and you probably know you're going to, not work with that service provider ever again. But if that person in the store, in the retail shop, was really nice to you, or if the agent was really good on the phone and took you through a lot of parameters, although you were still frustrated, you would give it a positive rating. You would say, that was a good experience. But you're not necessarily going to go back to that brand and buy that product or service. In fact, you might be leaving the brand the next day because of that frustration in terms of the price you're paying, the service you're getting. You just gave this a good rating because you were just happy with the person at the store, you were happy with the agent. So because of all these challenges, these KPIs are being looked at in a very subjective way. And in a world where we're moving towards a lot of digital channels, the application of AI is absolutely important, because that's what's going to augment how we look at KPIs. And when you can understand the tone of a customer, you can understand the sentiment, the frustration, you can then better predict if that customer is actually going to come back and buy a product from you. So I think this is going to be a very important space where we're going to see a lot of innovation moving forward.
Look, I even think we're going to start to see people not just sort of measuring the customer, but measuring the language of the contact center staff, the language in store once that comes back, the language on a website, on an app. I think there's been a real movement at the moment towards sort of empathy and authenticity is two really important things that every brand should be focusing on right now. And, in an app or a website, that's often just a matter of changing some of the language and the wording and, the messaging and some of the images, et cetera, might be part of it. But in a contact center, that's the tone of the agent, right? And again, there are AI-based tools that can start to measure these things about how authentic or how much empathy an agent is showing to a customer at the moment. Because ultimately, I think that's how a lot of our customers are judging us today, right? That in this particular pandemic era, that we need to be a more authentic brand and have a more authentic conversation with our customers. And it's not as much about just winning deals, perhaps, as it has been in the past.
And I think because of that, even the way we take part in surveys, sometimes it's very tiring right now. A lot of us have taken part in surveys. A lot of us have been asked to give feedback. But I'm also starting to notice a lot of customers that are starting to make surveys really fun and easy, through the app, for example. You don't have to ask so many complicated questions. And in fact, now is a really good time to ask your customers questions, because in some industries, because of social distancing, because of some of the challenges in rolling out some services, your customers might be having different expectations in terms of services. So if you're going to design a survey right now, it's important to ask customers, for example, if it's the airline industry, a lot of people are concerned about, when I bought that aeroplane, am I going to be safe in terms of social distancing? What's some of the hygiene factors? And I saw Etihad today, for example, they put out a really good statement about health and well-being, about how they're going to practice social distancing. And they got a lot of feedback from customers about how they want to sit in the aircraft. So I think this is a great time for every brand to get feedback about products and services around the challenges your customers are facing. And, if you look at this diagram here, this is a very clever app designed by this company called Local Measure. And it's, this product that they've developed is just so simple. You give their feedback through different emojis. The product's been used by a lot of the leading hotels across the world. And it's as simple as, when you opt in through Wi-Fi, this will appear on your screen. It'll come out as a pop-up. And if you're not happy with your check-in experience, it just triggers off a call to the contact center or to the front desk, and they will immediately try to resolve that problem. Now, you can just imagine what this does to your whole experience at the hotel. So instead of being frustrated when you check out and then go to TripAdvisor and give the hotel a really bad review, these brands are using apps like this and technologies like this to proactively reach out to the customer and solve the problem. And that's a really clever way, because by the time the customer then goes, at the end of the stay, when they check out, the staff will say, "How was your stay?" And they'll say, "It was great. My problems were taken care of on day one." So I think there's a lot to be thought about in terms of how we ask questions, how we design surveys. And I think, definitely machine learning will play a role in also accelerating this whole experience. So I think AI will be critical in helping eradicate some of the inefficiencies in CX, like Tim spoke about earlier. And as I talked about as well, in terms of, for example, if you're going to analyze some voice interactions and non-voice interactions, it's good to apply sentiment analysis to that, because unless you really understand what your customer's saying, how happy or frustrated they are, from the tone of the customer, from whether the customer was angry, you're not really going to have a full view of the customer. And that's why to just rely on a survey can be quite challenging sometimes, because we know what it's like. A lot of people will just tick boxes, but AI is going to play that role in terms of enhancing these processes. And like I presented earlier, the ability to be proactive is going to be really important. More and more brands are realizing that, hey, we don't just have to, you know, get involved in that experience when the customer has a problem, when the customer is angry. How can we actually, at the very early journey of that, when that customer is having the problem, at the very start, for example, like when they checked into the hotel, how can we solve that problem? So AI is going to play a very important role in also helping detect issues along the way. And it's not just about voice calls. It's about the tweet you sent. It's about the digital experience. It's about the experience on the mobile app. These things have to be looked at very seriously. And it is definitely something that a lot of brands are now looking at, because they know that this is the next step in terms of how they can help achieve excellence in CX.
So despite having some of the best analytics in the world and some of the best machine learning in the world, organizations still get things wrong, right? And this was the traditional way of upselling, and Amazon became the allegedly best in class at this. In terms of here's something that someone you bought these things, someone else bought those things, and they bought this other thing too, so you might be interested in it. Is this approach that they've used? And I guess I'd argue that this recommendation style approach to trying to upsell customers has sort of run its path, right? This is an example of an email I got from Amazon. So what Amazon is trying to sell me here, if you understand, because I had no idea what this was, right? This is a chair for a tree stand. And a tree stand is something that you put in a tree when you're hunting animals. So, so this assumes that I've already got a tree stand, and it's just wanting to sell me a new chair, the mossy oak camo chair for that particular tree stand. It also is making a big assumption that I'm a hunter, that I own guns, and that I want to take the life of other animals. Now, as it turns out, I don't actually want to do any of those things, and I've actually besides never shot a gun in my life, I've never held a gun in my life. And so I look at this and go, how in God's name did Amazon think that this would be something that I'm interested in? And so there's actually a little click here, why to see these items are recommended. And so I did click here, and it basically said that because you've bought an umbrella and some USB-C peripherals and a wireless charger, you're interested in a new seat for your tree stand that you don't own. So I look at that and go, even as I said, the best-in-class companies seem to be getting this whole upsell thing wrong. And actually what they need to be doing is actually focusing on that whole journey and, looking at delighting me at certain points in the journey. And so this is where one of the big things we're seeing, I think this is going to be one of the big areas of spend around CX this year. If you're not looking at this, I suggest you do, because it's moving from just sort of leading edge and bleeding edge organizations into the mass market, is that customer journey analytics. Understanding the personal journey of each specific customer and the opportunities along the way to make sure that that journey runs smoothly, right? So yeah, we are seeing there are a number of suppliers of this software and these tools, and we're starting to see it integrated into some of the, into the CX suites, etc. Well, some of the I guess a standard way of using this software would be, an example might be that you get an email from someone, you click on that email, you click on the image that takes you to a website, you click around that website a bit, and then you leave. And then they use that data to go that, okay, Tim clicked on this email, he did this particular journey, he then left the site, he didn't buy. And so nearly the common way of using this customer journey analytics is to then send me an email saying, you went to our website and you didn't buy, right? And I've always found it a bit creepy, right? Going, you know, like, I know that you know that, but don't rub it in my face that you're tracking every single click of mine, because I personally do find that a bit creepy, right? So interestingly, the organizations that are using this really well are the ones that are making it invisible, that are using machine learning tools to analyze every point of the journey. And example I heard about from a French firm is that they've actually, in their mobile app, if that mobile app crashes and then you reopen that mobile app, it actually gives you a different experience than what you were getting beforehand. Because they've gone, oh, you know what, this is probably an unhappy customer now because the app crashed. So maybe we apply, you know, for this customer, we might just apply a 5% discount across the board and not even tell them about it, right? That, you know, not even apologize for the app crashing, but let's just give them a really good personalized experience at this point in time. And again, using analytics and machine learning to work out what's going to work best in that particular situation for that particular customer. So this is, if you're not investing in customer journey analytics, this is an area that we are seeing an uptick in interest, particularly at the moment, because it is that little bit easier when all of your customer journeys are happening in the digital channels to be able to track them effectively across all those touch points, to be able to track your, you know, verified users and even your unverified users across all the different touch points is certainly much easier in the digital space than if they then walk into a store or a branch or have a face-to-face meeting with you. The other thing we're seeing AI start to do is actually make the apps themselves and the processes much smarter and more automated. So what I'm talking about here, so there's all the little, there's all the things we can do with AI within the customer experience itself, right? And that's improving our existing journey, our existing processes. But I had it explained to me recently that, you know what, we can actually use AI and automation to get rid of processes, right? That, you know, all these processes that we're trying to improve, how about we just get rid of them, right? So let's say at the moment, you know, I ring a contact center and I say, I want to order this product. So they verify who I am, they look up my account, they might, you know, they go into the drop-down list and they pull the, you know, they find the product that I want to order, you know, they find the supplier that they have to get it from, they put my delivery address in, the supplier address, et cetera, and it's a 5-10 minute process to put this order through. Now, I might ring that company once a month and make that same order, right? And so, you know, we're starting to see the smarter organizations try to automate that end to end so that process just disappears. So it just becomes invisible. And if you look at that, probably 80% of your customers order the same 20% of the products all the time, right? Or 80% of the time, perhaps. So therefore, a fair chunk of your customer experiences are really common, you know, for the customer and, you know, across customer groups and personas. So we are starting to see the application vendors jump on board with this. Applications, CRM, ERP, finance applications, HR applications, etc., that learn, you know, that learn that, you know, when I ring up, they go, oh, look, it's Tim Sheedy. As soon as I get verified, it automatically fills in every field, and all the agent has to click is order now. Now, I might ring up once out of every 20 times and say, I want something different. Now, that's when it goes into that manual override process. That will be a 10-minute call, not a 30-second call, right? But this is where we are seeing AI and automation start to make the application smarter. Now, I'd be arguing that you should be going to your application vendors today and asking for this if you don't have it. I would also recommend that you ask for this in the core product. There are a bunch of the smaller, I guess, more nimble application vendors that are making intelligence just part of the core, and others, I think some of the bigger ones in particular, want you to pay more for that intelligent capability. You know, you pay the normal amount for the dumb application, and then you pay more to make it smart. Well, I'd argue that every application should be smart, you know, and the more pressure that we as customers and organizations can put on the application providers, the quicker that'll happen. And the point about this is that this will happen within the applications. This isn't our own coding. This isn't our own learning. This isn't our own data scientists. These are applications themselves that learn, right? That get smarter as they go, that you can throw data at, historical data at, and they get better and they start to automate themselves. And this is where I think the future of much of our AI will be. And it's these things. It's, taking processes away from people, right? There's all these things we can do to make processes more delightful, but how about we just get rid of those processes completely? So in order to do this, now I know a couple of the people on the call have probably already seen these slides because I've been using them for a couple of years now. To deliver a great customer experience and to become a digital business, to be agile and innovative and obsessed with your customer outcomes that you're trying to drive, you need a different business model and an organization model. Basically, I'd argue that yes, you can do it with the current model, but it's a bit broken. And look, I'll give you an example. I actually saw a press release this morning that Deloitte has won a new contract for Oz.gov to update that service. And so I look at that and go, so probably Oz.gov was a service that was, outsourced to someone to build a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And I'm guessing it's been sitting there and hasn't actually improved at all in that time. Whereas your mobile apps, our experiences continue to, grow. Our expectations of those experiences continue to grow. This old-fashioned approach of sort of this project-based approach to delivering value, where we deliver it and then we just manage it, has disappeared, right? So look, I'll use an airline as an example. I know airlines aren't, a great example today, but I'll try to make it a little relevant. So at the top is how airlines organize themselves today, right? They have all these different teams, all these silos, and these are the silos that Audrey was referring to earlier, that people are saying this stops us offering a great omni-channel experience, right? Where this is down the bottom is how a customer views their air travel experience. So I organize a trip, I'm in the airport for a while, hopefully not very long, I'm on the plane, and then I'm off the plane to my final destination, right? So let's use a current example, the one Audrey used around the airline that was doing some stuff around sort of creating certainty around planes being a safe, clean environment. If you wanted to do that today in the old-fashioned organizational model, if you wanted social distancing and cleaning and messaging around that, and the way staff work on planes and the way they communicate to customers, and the way your baggage is handled, etc., to make sure it's also safe, you're probably getting your baggage handling, your flight services, your IT, your maintenance, your aircrew, maybe loyalty, HR, finance, engineering, etc. You're getting all these teams together to work on that initiative. And even setting that first meeting is going to take you, it's not going to happen this week to get 8, 9, 10 people even on a Zoom call, right? So, we're going to get all these people with conflicting KPIs, right? To come together and try to agree on this initiative. And that's what takes a really long time. And that's why this current business model and organization model just doesn't work. So we are starting to see Australian businesses and businesses across the globe and across the region. I'd actually argue this is happening faster in Asia Pacific than it is across the rest of the world. These are some just examples from Australia of organizations that I've worked with on moving to this more customer-centric, restructuring themselves around the customer journey, putting everyone into that team that can focus on that in-flight experience, or for a bank, the in-branch experience and the mobile experience, etc. And putting those people together so they can all work together with a shared KPI towards the same outcomes. And this is actually an example of Airtasker. This was the way they structured themselves, and you can see that they've structured themselves around their customers. So there's the job posters, the actual workers, the support team, etc. And within each team, there's product managers, designers, the IT, the developers, etc., marketers, customer experience, business analysts, etc. And then there are some shared services that sit across these functions, right? And this is the way they deliver new capabilities really quickly. This is the way realestate.com can deliver, I think, 20, 30 new capabilities a day. This is the way AWS and the big cloud companies are delivering hundreds of new changes every hour on their service. It's with these models versus that traditional IT model where You know, just that disconnect between the IT team, the customer experience team, the marketing team, the sales team, just those disconnects alone can take a couple of weeks. You know, IT comes up with an idea and they put it forward. It might be a couple of weeks before they get the feedback, right, on that idea. Whereas in this model, you know, there's a stand-up meeting every morning and a stand-up meeting every afternoon. I know sales teams have moved to this model, finance teams that are driving improvements to their ERP system every day, basically, and their finance systems every day. It's not just a build and dump and don't improve it for 3 years. It's a continually improved process that they're using. And this is just a bit of an ecosystem view of that same model. So in terms of that delivery model, I suggest that you know, if you haven't moved to that yet, I suggest that you find a company that you think is doing this really well. And I call this also the software delivery model, because ultimately that's what digital is. Digital is delivering a piece of software for someone to interact with on a digital device. So if there's a software company that you think does a really good job, that's delivering great innovation to your business, approach them. Say, how do you guys organize yourself? Now, what's your structure that you use to deliver your value quickly? Because we might use that, or we might modify that structure. You know, you're going to need to make that business case, decide what to insource, outsource, develop that transition plan. You know, the best in class around the transition to this new model is to actually have a really good fallback strategy. The fallback strategy gives you the ability to move to this new model faster, with the knowledge that if something breaks or if something doesn't work in this new model that you try, that you can fall back quickly. And look, organizations like REA and others that have moved to this model a few years ago are now on version 3 or 4 of this model as they continue to improve and tweak it. And focus on skills is the other thing. Right? You know that your organization is going to be using more cloud next year than they will this year. You know that machine learning is going to be more important. In certain industries, you know that IoT, blockchain, etc., might be just around the corner. You know, the question I'm often asking CIOs and their teams is, well, what are you doing to skill up your organization? And I saw something recently that ANZ Bank, just, you know, I think in sort of copying NAB, went on the biggest cloud education program in Australian organizations' history. I know there's certainly some bigger ones from across the region. We've seen it with some of the banks in Singapore too, have done significant programs in training, not just their technical staff, but non-technical staff around their cloud platforms, because they realize that everyone's going to be using these platforms going forward. So, you know, this is what you need to do to deliver agility and a great customer experience, you know, and innovation at pace, right? It is this model that delivers it. I can tell you from that, I've been a judge in the CIO 50 awards in Australia for the last couple of years, and in some of the regional ones too. And about 4 or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, moving to this model got you into the top 10, right? It showed that you were an organization that got it. I'd argue that, you know, in last year's CIO 50 and CIO awards across the region, having this model was just a hygiene factor to be considered in that top 20, 30 or 40, right? That you need this model to be able to deliver innovation at pace within your business. You know, it's just so hard to do with those traditional models. So, look, the last slide here, I'll hand over to Audrey to give a beginning of this slide, and I'll just close it off.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tim. So I think, you know, every time we run this survey on our platform, we ask this question to businesses. We ask leaders, you know, what is your number one business priority? CX always leads by far, and you can see from this chart, that's a very big lead as compared to some of the other points discussed here. And it just goes to show how important driving customer experience is for the CEO of an organization, for the board of directors. But often what's happening is they make that statement, but sometimes that message is just not aligned to marketing, for example, to sales, to engineering, to IT, and ultimately to the contact center. And just like what Tim spoke about just now with the airline experience, you've got to drive that experience in from baggage to when the customer is in the aeroplane, right to when they get off the plane. to even the point when they're constantly interacting with that contact center agent. But to get all those parameters right, it requires a lot of tight integration. It requires aligned KPIs that everyone achieves. It's not happening today because every department have their own KPIs to meet. And so when there's a disconnect, sometimes internally, it's very hard then for an organization to drive customer experience. And that's why, as you heard in one of the charts I presented, a lot of brands are saying, you know, our departments, we're not having the same information across departments. So there's a huge disconnect. And I think there's a lot organizations can do, as you heard from Tim and myself today, by applying technology to improve some of these processes.
And look, I wanted to maybe end with a bit of a sobering thought and some of the challenges going forward. So, you know, looking at some of our more recent data on the platform, improving customer experience is still the #1 priority, but we certainly are seeing reducing costs and managing costs, you know, some commentary around minimizing revenue leakage, et cetera, start to creep up the priority list. And this is one of the risks of customer experience and the customer experience teams in 2020 and probably 2021, is that CFOs are going to focus on, you know, just reducing costs, you know, making sure that, you know, shoring up the bottom line, basically. And that's a challenge, right? Because that means if you're not focusing on and continually improving that customer experience, then, you know, then you're falling behind, right? Because your competitors are doing that. So that certainly is a risk at the moment. The other one is that, you know, across the region and across the world, the pandemic is hitting the small and medium businesses harder. And when you lose the small and medium businesses out of a market, when they shut down, then it takes a year or two for them to come back, right? Because, you know, a sole trader becomes a 2 or 3 person business, you know, and then gets to 15, 20, 30, 50 employees over 3, 4, 5 years, right? It doesn't happen straight away. So losing these medium and small enterprises and organizations is also a particular risk to customer experience, because the big guys, for the most part, are going to survive. And the big guys often innovate their customer experience because it's the little guys nipping at their heels, right? It's the little ones who are coming up and saying, you know, we've got this great new app, this great new service, this great new product or capability. And the big guys have to sort of do everything they can to keep up. That's certainly not always the case. And there's some great examples across the region of some large organizations really going above and beyond at the moment in this COVID-19 pandemic. But, you know, as a general rule, you know, without that competition, we won't see customer experience shift along faster. So those economies like Australia and Denmark, et cetera, who've tried to sort of put their economy on freeze to keep all those businesses, you know, going, and as many of those small and medium businesses, you know, can continue to operate, are probably the ones that are going to come out of this pandemic with a stronger market, with more competition, and with more of a hunger to continue to drive that customer experience. So look, that's all from Audrey and myself. These are our contact details, our email if you have any questions, our Twitter handles if you want to reach out to us on Twitter. But I know we have sort of gone the full hour, but if you do have any questions, now's an opportunity to ask them. And otherwise, you know, feel free to email us or reach out to us through the platform or through an account manager if you've got any follow-ups. Thank you.
Yeah, so Chris here back again. So thanks very much everyone for joining. I think we have come to the end of our time. So Tim, Audrey, we got a couple of questions. Do you want to take those, or do you want to take those offline with the people that asked those questions?
Yeah, look, I'll take, maybe we'll take one each.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So I think Audrey, you mentioned that now will be the best time for you to engage with your customers during this crisis as they're reaching out to you. So how do you think brands can get closer to their customers during this time and create that closer bond with their customers?
Yeah, sure. I think, now's a good time to really listen to them. For example, if it's through the call center, really ask them about the new services they want from you. It could be a bank, it could be an insurance company. A lot of individuals are going through hardship, but it's a good time to ask about those services, because you never know that those services will eventually become proper products in the future. I think if it's the airline, I think now's a great time to find out about what customers want to see when they can fly again, because there's a lot of fear out there amongst customers. And it's a great time for airlines to take this opportunity to get every form of feedback, because you can potentially outdo your competitor now if you introduce unique services around social distancing, for example.
That's it. And I'd argue we should be thinking above and beyond what maybe our organization does today, right? So, start thinking about the pain that your customers might be suffering at the moment, and work out, is there anything you can do, to help ease that? Anything, within what you do or your partners do, or a new partner that you might want to join up with, can help that. We're seeing some good services around mental health and insurance companies, for example. Because it's not something an insurance company normally does, but they've got paying customers and they want their customers to get some sort of value.
Okay. And Tim, I think we saw this in the final slide, and I think you mentioned it in your presentation as well. But we're looking at great employee experience, which is also has an importance in customer experience. So how are those two related, and what do you think good employee experience looks like?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. They are related. We know, the academic research is actually starting to prove this, not just sort of commercial research, but the peer-reviewed research is showing that a productive employee is a happy employee, and a happy employee offers a better customer experience. And we've actually seen, a number of examples across Asia Pacific where organizations have tried to offer a changed customer experience, but haven't taken employees on the journey. And they've come out publicly and said, our CX initiatives failed because we didn't focus on the employee. But in terms of what makes a happy employee, it's actually a productive employee. And again, this is where there's some real academic research that sort of shows that it's employees that are in a state of flow, that there can be 1,000 things that an organization does, free drink fridges, which aren't that relevant when you're working at home, but volunteering holidays, all these great little perks that they offer, which might all be great, but ultimately what makes us happy is at the end of the day, when you go, or after you've been working on something and you go, I really got something done today, or I really achieved something. That's actually what drives a happy employee. So productivity is what we really need to focus on. Try to get out of the way of our employees in offering, in them being productive. I think often we try to get in their way, and we, particularly from the technology perspective, information workers actually say the number one thing that stops them being productive is technology. And it's funny, the IT team would probably argue that it's the number one thing that keeps them productive at the same time, right? So, but it's the constant chat, the emails, the crashes, the security, the need to re-authenticate, re-log in, etc. It's all these things that take us out of that state of flow, which means we don't end up happy at the end of that period or the end of the day, right? So, the technology team actually has a really important role to play in keeping us productive, but also working with the HR team, working with operations, etc. Particularly in this home working environment, there's a lot of things we can do to drive better productivity in the home. And again, this is what's going to make us happy as employees. And if we're happy, we're going to be out there giving better customer experiences, and we're going to be supporting more of those CX initiatives on the back end much more effectively, because we're just more engaged as an employee.
Thanks. Audrey, you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, and just to add to that, from a contact center perspective, everyone knows the pressures agents are going through right now, and that industry faces one of the highest attrition rates in terms of agents leaving their jobs all the time. And research has shown, just like what Tim alluded to, that if your agents are not happy, they will not be able to serve the customers well. If your frontline staff are not happy, they cannot serve their customers well. So keeping employees engaged, especially during times like this, keeping them motivated is absolutely critical. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think that is a good place for us to end this webinar. So thanks very much, Tim and Audrey, for sharing your expertise, and of course for everyone who joined today. Thanks to you as well. So before we wrap up, as you can see on the screen right now, we just encourage you to create your account on the Ecosystem platform at ecosystem360.com. As I mentioned previously, all the reports and content is currently free on the platform, so feel free to log on and take part in the studies and view the reports and the blogs and the Ecosystem TV. We will be sending the slides for today's presentation through to the participants, and the video will be made on demand for you as well, so you can view that again or share it with your colleagues who you think might find it of interest. But with that, I'd like to thank Tim and Audrey once again, and thanks to all of you, and we look forward to engaging with you once again in the future. So from all of us at Ecosystem, thank you very much.